Hello, dear friends. I would like to mention something that I said at the synagogue, both in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, at the Frishman Synagogue, at the Shayarot Harel Synagogue, over this past Pesach, Passover. I'd like to start off with a story. Man is driving in Tel Aviv, but Tel Aviv is a small city, very hard to park, and he's had a long day. You know, people in high tech, they work long hours. And he's driving home and he says, well, God, I know I've not been the best person. Sometimes I cut corners, but I've had a really hard day. And I have a request. Just today, if once there could be an empty parking spot in front of my building, I don't want to start looking around for spots. I just don't have the strength. I just want to go home, eat something, go to sleep. I just had enough for today. Please, you'll see there are lots of things. I will be a better person. I can turn a new leaf. Just give me that chance. And now as he's driving, he comes towards the street. As he's driving up the street, he's about to hit his building, and this long truck just makes its way out and leaves a gap of like 2-3 cars right in front of his building. He pauses for a moment as he's driving. He says, God, we talked about a few minutes ago? You can forget about it. I'm good now, so I think I've figured it out. But thank you anyhow. Any part. Something like that is human nature. That we dismiss things if we're okay. If we were, when we're okay, we don't consider that a miracle. The miracles that we were able to, the tragedies that were avoided, even if we realize that they were avoided, that's not a miracle. So when God helps us as individuals, or the people as at large, the Jewish people at large, we dismiss it. Could have happened, right? Unless we were actually sick and comatose in the hospital for 3 weeks and got out of it, then we'll say, okay, yeah. But aside from that, things that happen sometimes on a daily basis, like we say in our prayers, the miracles that happen every day. And the goodness and the wonders that you do for us every day. We seem to downplay that in our lives. I think a little bit like this happened also on the 13th of April this past year, 2024, where in the state of Israel, we were attacked by Iran with 331 projectiles, some of them significant missiles, other of them drones, all different types, long-range missiles, mid-range. And Israel was unscathed. Of course, we had the systems, we had the Iron Dome, the David Sling, etc., but they all worked. There was this fellow interviewed, a physics professor from my university, Bar Ilan. And in his interview, he says, look, I consider this a miracle. I can explain why. He says, look, I'm very familiar with the operations of these systems. The Iron Dome, the David Sling. Now, when these systems, let's say, are for sale, and if you have to buy it, it will say, we are willing to predict 90% efficacy of these systems. They're effective 90%. They will never say 100% because it can't be 100%. And if it's 85%, people are not going to ask for their money back. No country. Because that's also good. The fact that these systems work 99%, he says, is a miracle statistically, especially since anything could have gone wrong. You had all these countries that were involved. There could have been a problem there too. The United States and France and Jordan and Saudi Arabia together with Israel. I think even Germany helped out. So and who orchestrated all this within a few days? There are miracles that happen in a natural way. And you have to learn to appreciate. And you have to learn that God stands behind his people and is there to protect us, but we have to be appreciative and we have to show gratitude for these things that happen. And in general, our lives, God wants to help us even as individuals. But sometimes we have to say thank you. Sometimes we have to just show that gratitude when it's needed. That's the first thing I want to say. Because this is also, even the whole state of Israel, after 2,000 years, the Jewish people, after an exile of 2,000 years, came back to its land. It's unheard of. I saw this lady who was talking about decolonialization. And she was saying Israel is actually the only case in history where had decolonialization, which means the Jews were able to come back to their indigenous land and throw out the conquerors who had conquered it from them, and then defend themselves in battle. We're not the colonialists, we're the decolonialists. We're the indigenous people who came back to the land that we were robbed of by the Romans, by the Greeks before that, by the Islamic Empire, by the Byzantines, by the Mamelukes, by the Turks, by the British, until we finally got back. But we have to understand that this is a miracle too. Sometimes we as Jews don't realize it's a miracle. The Talmud says, "Ein ba'al hanes makir b'niso," that when a miracle happens to you, you don't realize it. You think it's just the natural way. There was a fellow who was in an accident. His car turned into an accordion. And he gets out of his car, and the estimator comes down from the insurance company, says, "Okay, who was driving the car?" The guy says, "It was me." The estimator says, "That's not possible." Ein ba'al hanes makir b'niso. When a miracle happens to you, you don't realize it. The people looking from the outside, they realize it. You don't realize it. As a people, we came back to our country after 2,000 years. We think, that's natural because we're here. Others must have done it too. No, it's very unusual. That doesn't happen in human history. There's a reason why the historian Arnold Toynbee said about the Jewish people that we're like this Loch Ness monster that keeps emerging. We break all the known laws of history and keep reappearing on the stage all the time, contrary to everything that happens to every other nation that has its rise and fall and disappears. But I want to end with an interpretation of the Sfat Emet. That's Rebbe of Gur, Yehuda Alter, Aryeh Leib Yehuda Alter of Gur, the third Rebbe of Gur. That's a city in Poland, Gora Kalvaria, who wrote a very interesting commentary on the Hasidic commentary in the Bible called Sfat Emet, the language of truth. And he says, why is it on the Seder night we say, anybody who tells more about the story of the Exodus story, the more the merrier. And actually, if you look in the Haggadah, we don't say a lot about the story of the Exodus. We actually only take 4 verses, and the rabbinical interpretation of those 4 verses from Deuteronomy. But so why is this? Why is it we have to say more and more? I mean, it's the same story every year. Did we miss something last year that we didn't know this year? What does it mean, called a marvelous affair? Why do you have to keep saying, say the story, you got the point, no? So he says like this. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt, according to the Midrash, the rabbinic interpretation of the Second Temple period, the angels opposed. And they criticized. They said, God, why are you saving the Israelites and drowning the Egyptians? Yes, the Egyptians are idol worshippers, but the Israelites also became idol worshippers in Egypt under the Egyptians. So what's the difference between them? The Midrash says that the Jews had been so influenced by Egyptian culture that they had descended to the 49 levels of impurity. And God saved us at the last minute, or else we would have been in oblivion. Therefore, we have this psalm, which is called the Hallel, the praise from the Egypt story, Hallel HaMitzri, where 26 times King David says, Ki le'olam chasto, for his loving kindness is forever. Ki le'olam chasto. Why? And it talks about leaving Egypt. Why 26 times? First of all, it's the numerical value of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton. And it's also the 26 generations. From Adam to Noah were 10 generations. From Noah to Abraham were another 10 generations. And then another 6 generations till the time of Moses. As Abraham had Isaac. So you had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Amram, Moses. If you start from Abraham, that's 6 generations. So until the Jewish people left. So God took us out of Egypt, but we didn't deserve it. So the Sfat Emet, the Rebbe Gur says, so the reason we're supposed to tell this story on Pesach night is to understand why, to try to figure out why God took us out of Egypt. Obviously, God saw some potential in the Jewish people. And because of that, and he told the angels, I've taken them out. I know who they are. And because of that, he took us out of Egypt. You know, there's a story about a certain man who was pushing his wife in a wheelchair, who was suffering from a debilitating disease. Somebody walked over to him and said, does she know who you are? Maybe her memory is going. And the man right away turned back to the person without the blink of an eye and said, I know who she is. God knows who we are as a people. He knows our potential. He's just waiting for us to discover that potential. So according to Sfat Emet, every year, when we talk about the Egypt story, the goal is to try to figure out what was that potential that God saw in us, that based on that, he took us out of Egypt against all odds, even though we didn't deserve it. And as Sfat Emet says, every year we can get closer to it. We have to keep trying to figure it out. And when the time comes that Pesach will come, where we'll figure out exactly what God saw within us, that because of that, he took us out of Egypt, we will discover our potential, and that will bring redemption. Because the people have to find it within themselves for the redemption to happen. So we have to take ourselves seriously. We have to take our ability to connect to God seriously. The fact that God cares about human beings, we have to take that seriously. Our responsibility to our people, to the world, we have to take it seriously, and of course seriously, and of course for ourselves and our families too. We have the ability to make change for the good. We will take ourselves seriously and discover our potential. We might even reach it. Shalom, shalom.